National Nutrition Natural Health Reviews. 3 minutes of the latest naturopathic info with Canada's leading nutrition experts. Watch, learn, and get healthy naturally.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonathan Beatty, naturopath and a health expert here at nationalnutrition.ca. Today we're going to talk a little bit about yeast infections, not the typical type that most people think about, which is your vaginal yeast infection, but something that a lot of people actually have and they don't realize they do because it's something that's very difficult to diagnose, and most doctors don't understand entirely how yeast infections work intestinally. And so what we're going to talk about today is intestinal yeast overgrowth. And the big misunderstanding in this area is the difference between an overgrowth and an infection. Yeast is a normal finding in the human gut. Pretty much every human on earth walking around has a variety of different yeast species living in their gut. The trouble comes when certain pathogenic yeasts overgrow. So these are yeasts that are normally present in very low amounts, and they're typically lying around in a dormant state. However, due to changes in their environment, due to certain medications or the presence of certain other bacteria or other yeasts, they become activated and they overgrow. So their population increases to the point that they're able to displace the beneficial bacteria. Now, the trouble with these yeast come from the fact that they're primary fermenters. So the way in which they eat is by breaking down your food, and they produce fermentation byproducts. A common one that you might know about is alcohol. So alcohol is produced through the fermentation of sugar, and one of the other things we understand about alcohol is it's toxic. Anybody who's consumed too much of it has felt that effect. Typically it's going to, start with vomiting and diarrhea, and then of course you can feel headachy, you can feel quite sick, and actually alcohol poisoning can lead to death. So that's a really good introduction to the power of yeast toxins. They can be strong enough to kill a human when they're consumed in too large an amount from an exogenous source. Now, internally, it's not typically going to get to that level of toxicity, but it can be. So what we're going to work on today are ways to try and identify if you may have a yeast infestation. And you'll notice I say infestation over infection because I'm referring more to an overgrowth. And then some things you can do to help minimize the effects of that. So if after eating a carbohydrate heavy meal you find that you ate the small bun and it feels like you ate the entire loaf of bread, you're quite bloated, that's usually a good sign of fermentation occurring. Basically the digestion of the carbohydrate is leading to gas production, which is why you feel bloated. So that can be a good sign. Itching of the skin. Fermentation produces certain toxins that can cause itching of the skin in some people. So if after eating you start to find that your skin gets itchy, that can be a sign of a yeast infestation as well. And then, changes in your bowels, so production of mucus, where you see mucus with your bowel movements. That's a sign of inflammation, which again could be related to yeast. Now, these symptoms can occur for other reasons, and this is why it's important to work with a doctor who understands yeast infestations and can help you properly diagnose them. It is a very difficult thing to culture. It's not a very well cultured infestation. And this is where, sometimes if you're going to look for it in a stool sample, you may actually have to run multiple cultures to see if it's there. And even more effective, in my opinion, is doing what they call urine organic acid testing. And what you're actually looking for in those tests are specific metabolites produced by the yeast. And if you see those metabolites in levels that are above the normal physiological levels, that's a good piece of evidence that there's a yeast overgrowth, because what you're seeing is, the evidence of its metabolism. You're seeing that it's there, it's alive, it's active, and it's producing these metabolites. And that's an easy way that can help you to diagnose whether you have that problem or not. Now, if you do, there's a couple of great anti-yeast therapies out there. A few of my favorites, I'm a big fan of using a herb called Tehebbium petaginusa, or Tahibo, or pau d'arco as it's sometimes called. I also like using oregano oil. I like using grapefruit seed extract, colloidal silver. There's a whole variety, and the reason I often use a combination of these is yeast can very easily develop resistances to different interventions, and oftentimes use of a single intervention will just result in resistance created by the yeast. So it's good to use multiple interventions all at the same time. That reduces the chances of developing a resistant strain of yeast in your system and losing one of the tools in your toolbox. It's the one thing with these herbs and with these interventions is some of them can be toxic. Remember, they're there to kill a living organism. So you want to make sure you're working with somebody who knows how to dose them appropriately, so that you don't accidentally poison yourself. And then with that, as yeast die, it doesn't know that it's you killing it. So it often tries to defend itself by secreting toxins to try and kill whatever is trying to kill it. This can lead to what we call a Herxheimer reaction, which can create a variety of symptoms such as nausea, headaches, skin eruptions. There's a whole variety of things that can happen. What you're trying to do to alleviate that is you're going to try and improve the effectiveness of your liver at breaking down these toxins produced. And as I mentioned, yeast produce toxins similar to alcohol. Probably the most common toxin that actually leads to a lot of the symptoms of hangover, as well as leads to the die-off reactions that most of us experience, is a compound called acetaldehyde. And supplementing with B vitamins, vitamin C, and N-acetylcysteine can improve your body's metabolism of this toxin, thus reducing die-off reactions. So hopefully this video has helped you understand a little bit about intestinal yeast infestations or infections, ways that you can go about trying to figure out if you have one, how to get it diagnosed, and then hopefully how to treat it and manage some of the side effects of the treatment. So share this video if you think it's going to be effective for somebody else or helpful to somebody else. You can always subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can check out all of our health-related videos. Any questions or comments you can always post below. And last but not least, be sure to remember, knowledge is health.